I'm Richard from Electric Classic Cars, and on this week's episode, it's time to talk about the beautiful Triumph Vitesse. Let's get into it. Now, I'm not the British car expert here, Tim is, so you may well hear Tim a little bit more than normal on this episode, because when this first came in, I thought this was a Triumph Herald, and from the side profile, you can see why, because it's literally the same as a Triumph Herald. It's only till you come around to the 3/4 and see the front, you realise it's a Triumph Vitesse, because it's got the dual headlights here, and the real thing that gives the game away, there's a badge that says Vitesse. So this had the 6-cylinder engine in, which I think was 2 litre, and this is a Mark II 1971, so it's one of the very last Vitesses, whereas the Triumph Herald had a 4-cylinder engine in. And I've driven one of them, and it's not sporty. But this with a 2 litre engine in, I think it was about 70 odd horsepower, it was actually, fairly rapid in this.
That was marketed as the sporty version of the Triumph range, yeah.
Really? Okay. Yeah. What age is your Healy?
64.
And what size engine's in that?
3 litre straight 6.
Okay. So it probably wouldn't be able to keep up with the Healy then.
I hope not.
He says. So, as I say, I'm not a UK or British car expert, and I don't even know if Triumph cars are the same as Triumph motorbikes. Are they or not?
They are. Well, they were when they started, yes. It's a bit different now because they've all been bought by other companies. But
there's not many companies out there, car companies, that also made motorbikes, is there? I mean, I know of Honda, that's about it, and Suzuki.
Yeah. There's quite a few British ones, but maybe...
Comments below, before you start reeling them out, because I know you know everything about British cars. Comments below, what other car manufacturers out there also make motorbikes? But what I really want to show you first on this is the quality of the restoration. So let's have a look at that. We get a lot of freshly restored classic cars come through this workshop, but I've got to say, this restoration is on another level. So Paul Cull from Triumph Auto Classique, if you're out there, take a bow, young man, because this is stunningly restored. I mean, everything about it is fantastic. The interior work, the dashboard has been trimmed out beautifully, but, not just the paint is shiny, but as an engineer, we learn to get underneath these cars, and everything you can see has been put together absolutely spot on. I hope Tim does it justice, doing lots of close-ups of the workmanship that's gone into this car. And I hope we do it justice, converting it to electric at equally high standard. And on that note, let's get into electric conversion. Like all the classic cars that come in here, the first thing is corner weight it. And we put this on the scales, and it's come out at 675 kilos because it's got no engine in, no fuel tank, no exhaust, but it does have the gearbox. So it's a lot lighter than the 925 kilos you'd normally see for a Triumph when it's got its internal combustion engine in and all the other dirty, smelly stuff. Which is why the wheels look a little bit funny on this, because there's a lot of weight already been taken out. So the camber of the wheels is looking a little bit odd. So that gives us 250 kilos to play with when we're putting in the batteries and the motor. And on that note, it's time to open up the bonnet, because we've got a little bit of a head start already. We've put the motor in. So Tim, can you give me a hand lifting up the bonnet? Because I'm totally paranoid of scratching it if I lift it on my own. Now, for those that know me well, you'll know there's 2 flavours of cars we build here at Electric Classic Cars. There is mild and there's wild. And if you want to see one of our wild builds, get yourself to the installer show, Birmingham NEC, between the 27th and the 29th of June. The installer show is the UK's largest event for heat, water, air and energy specialists. I'll be there for the duration with our Land Rover Defender, the world's fastest Land Rover Defender, Tesla-powered 600 horsepower, 0 to 60, 3.6 seconds. We'll be chatting all about electric vehicles during the show, and if you want to book your tickets, click on the link in the description. But more on this conversion, so let's get into this. This is definitely on the more mild side of the conversions that we do, primarily because that's what the customer wanted, but equally, if we went wild with this car, we would have had to have done loads of modifications to be able to cope with a huge amount of power. So what have we done? Well, we've used the good old Hyper 9 motor. It's one of the more common, in fact, more common than the Tesla motor we use in the workshop, quite frankly. It's 120 horsepower, which is, okay, it's more than 70 horsepower of the original engine, but not by a huge amount. We've made an adapter plate, which then couples it to the original gearbox. So you'll still be able to use the gears, but a lot of questions come when I say things like this. Why do you use a gearbox, etc.? Well, first of all, it keeps things simple, very straightforward to the installation. But just to explain, you hardly change gear. I would say you probably change gear maybe a third less than normal. So you might start off in second gear because you've got all that low down torque to start off from 0. And you might move up to a third, maybe fourth when you're at highway speeds. But that's pretty much about it. So town driving, second gear. On the highway or motorways, fourth gear. So we put the Hyper 9 motor already in. We're just starting to make the front mount here now. Now the plan is with this kit that we're designing for this car, because this chassis is used pretty much the same in things like the Triumph Herald, obviously. What are the cars?
Spitfire,
GT6. GT6. I knew you'd know them all. So this is a fairly common chassis. The idea is we're going to design a fairly generic kit, hopefully, that will fit in a load of other Triumph cars, not least of which the adapter plate fitting onto the gearbox. So question out there, guys, is there many differences out there between things like the engine mounts and things like that, between those cars that we mentioned? It would be good to know. Comments below, please. But you'll notice there's one big thing missing from this area, and that's the battery box. So let's have a chat about that. With this flip-up bonnet, the Triumphs were famous for their accessibility to the engine bay, but it's not as big as you might think. We realised that when we closed it, because when this comes down, the inner wing and these black panels here, if you like, really limit the actual space you can take up with the battery box. So this battery box we made quite long and narrow to fit in that space, and it kind of replicates, if you like, the engine block size. So imagine this mounted in there to around about there, and that is the front battery box. So this has 3 Tesla modules in, and there's another 2 in the boot, giving it around about 26 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, which should be around about 100-mile range. And if we go in the back, you can see how we've mounted it in the rear. Now, here in the boot, the remit was he wanted to keep the spare wheel, and why not, and maximise the amount of luggage space. So what we've done is we mounted the 2 other Tesla modules up here, and they're on posts here and attached to various different holes that were already there and available to us for mounting, because don't forget, all of our conversions are completely bolt in, not a single hole is drilled, if you like. So there's 2 Tesla modules there and 3 up front. So that's 150 kilos total of batteries with the Tesla motor. With the Hyper 9 motor, it's another 55 kilos. So we're up to about 205 kilos already, just with the batteries, battery boxes and motor. That gives us a 45 kilos to play with to get everything else in there, cables, chargers and other bits and pieces. So I think we'll be about bang on weight-wise. But fabrication guys have done a fantastic job so far. It's only a mock-up, obviously, but they've got the feet sitting beautifully into the original contours of the car, and there's 2 holes underneath here where the feet are actually mounted into. But I can see once we've got this kit done, this should be a very, very simple install for most conversion companies out there to do. While I'm here, I just want to emphasize, look at this. You know, this is a 1971 car, isn't it, Tim? And it's still got the 1950s fin at the back.
Yeah, I love fins.
It's great, isn't it? But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about a problem that became very apparent early on when we were assessing this car, which is this hole here. It's simply not big enough for a charge socket. So what we're going to do is going to leave that with the original fuel filler cap over. We're going to have to come up with an alternative placement, if you like, for the charge socket, because one thing I do not want to do is grind that out to be bigger and fit a charge socket in. So yeah, watch this space, because it's undecided as where we're going to put that at the moment. Now I'm sitting in the Triumph now, and one thing becomes very apparent. It's very British and quirky in here. I'm used to German cars, you know, Volkswagen and Porsche all day long. And looking in here, okay, on the plus side, the dashboard is wood, not plastic. Great. But look at the switches. You know, cars of this era back then had either stalk switches, rocker switches, and there's these odd things. I mean, there's a light switch there. I don't know whether or not to turn it, twist it, pull it, you know. There you go. So I pull it and it comes on. But right next to it, there's a stalk switch. And right above that, there's some random lever thing here that goes from left to right. I have no idea what that is. But, you know, as far as... Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention. The window winder. So where would you put a window winder? You're driving along, want to open the windows? Around about here, maybe? Oh no, not in the Triumph. It's down here by your feet. So your hand is hitting the seat every time you're opening up the window. It's really weird, unless you've got arms as long as an orangutan. But instrumentation-wise, we're going to keep the speedo exactly the same. RPM, exactly the same. That's obviously just going to pick up the RPM from the Hyper 9 motor. Temperature gauge we're going to keep, and that's just going to tell you the temperature of the motor. Fuel gauge we're going to keep as well, but we're going to change the input, if you like, because obviously that has an analog signal normally coming from a fuel gauge or a fuel sender in the tank, and we need to convert the battery management system, you know, computer language, if you like, to the old analog output for that. So there'll be a little converter box to be able to feed that with the right signal. But as far as the dashboard is concerned, we're going to keep it exactly looking the same as this. So there we go. The Triumph Vitesse project has started in earnest. I like it, but just not enough to persuade me away from my Volkswagen obsession, I think is the crux of the story. Do you like it, Tim? What do you think?
I do like it. I think that's going to be a really cool little conversion when that's running.
Thought you might like it. The question is, will Tim fit in it though? So the idea with the kit that we're developing here, as I said before, is we're going to design and build a generic kit for this platform. So hopefully it'll fit then the Triumph Vitesse, Triumph Herald, the Spitfire, GT6. Is there any others I've missed?
Stag?
Triumph Stag. I'm not a fan of Triumph Stags. Sorry, Triumph Stag owners, I don't know why. So there we go. That's the idea behind this kit, and I think the next episode we'll have it all finished, and the episode after that we'll go out for a drive. So stay tuned, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.